Hello, I'm Pip Courtney and welcome to A Taste of Landline, where we take you across the country to see the very best in food, fibre and more. On the show today, storing Australian seeds for the future near the North Pole.
It's a massive sort of vault in the side of a mountain, so you're going in there and it's just an eerie feeling in the context that there's agricultural diversity from around the world.
A special group of top-end growers.
It's a passion now.
I think now all the Western chefs that traditionally they've been doing Western food are becoming more and more conscious about Asian food.
And the little dairy that's thrown open the farm gates.
We're trying to give them backstage pass to our farm.
Hello, I'm Kerry State in a rather chilly and unusual bank in Horsham. The currency in here is seeds, and there's quite a selection, with more than 150,000 different types. It's a bank with a tiny currency and a big job. This is one of two national seed libraries set up to preserve biodiversity and advance agriculture. And now a large part of that essential infrastructure is being sent to one of the most remote places on Earth for safekeeping. 34,000 different types of grain and pasture seeds packed into more than 30 crates bound for Norway's global seed vault.
If a natural disaster happens, a flood, fire, bushfire comes through or something like that, and we lost everything here, if this building went up, if we didn't have it backed up anywhere, it would be lost. And there's globally unique material within these walls here.
That backup will be stored in a freezer like no other. Halfway between mainland Norway and the North Pole is the archipelago of Svalbard. It's home to more polar bears than people. And the global seed vault is even less visible. Just a big steel doorway peeking out of the rugged white wilderness.
When I went to Svalbard in 2014, it was a really, almost an overwhelming experience because, it's a massive sort of vault in the side of a mountain, so it's 100 and something metres into the mountain. So you're going in there and it's just an eerie feeling in the context that there's agricultural diversity from around the world, and this is agricultural history, so it was really kind of surreal.
A decade after opening, almost 900,000 different types of seeds are now stored here. While it's dubbed the Doomsday Vault because it's essentially an insurance policy in the event of a disaster or major conflict, underground it's a harmonious resource.
I guess when you go in there it's really quite interesting because you have the US right next to Russia, you have North Korea right next to South Korea. The seed vault is probably the only thing I know that's there for the greater good. There's no politics involved.
Sally Norton runs the Australian Grains Gene Bank at Horsham in Victoria, where Arctic conditions aren't exactly the norm.
So even though it's 30 degrees outside, we'll put our coats on.
What's the temperature going to be?
-20.
Excellent, excellent. Looking forward to this. I feel a bit daft putting beanie on when it's sweltering outside, but I'm sure I'm going to be very thankful for it in a minute. Some gloves?
Yep, gloves as well.
All right, let's go. It's a bit more clinical than the Norwegian vault, but the environment is very similar and crucial to the seed survival.
Oh yes, that's a bit nippy.
It is a bit cold in here.
So how long do things last in here for?
So things, the winter cereals in here, the wheat, barley, as long as it's good quality coming in, it'll generally last around about 100 years.
And is that the case for everything then?
No, not generally. So some of the high oil content seeds or the wild relatives don't last as long. So there's the wild relatives of wheat in here, and they don't generally last as long.
So how long would these last for?
These you might get 20 or 30 years before you might need to intervene, sometimes a little bit longer.
Okay.
This National Gene Bank was opened 4 years ago, bringing state collections of all types of grains, from cereals to legumes and oilseeds, under the one roof.
This is a quite significant gene bank in terms of size and level of operations. So there's around 1,700 gene banks around the world. And there's probably around about 50 in terms of the size. We've got about 150,000 different types of seed in here.
Unlike the Norwegian vault, Australia's gene banks do more than just store seeds. They grow them out.
26.58, Kev.
26.58.
Yep.
That makes for an eye-catching and uneven patchwork in the paddock come harvest time.
Yeah. Last one.
And more importantly, produces fresh seeds to deposit in the bank when stocks run low or the quality declines.
Once seed arrives into our seed bank here, we have to keep it alive forever, and that's a pretty big job. So I love that aspect of it, knowing that that's the history of Australian agriculture, but also the future of varieties that are going to be supporting Australian farmers and essentially anyone who eats food.
Steve Hughes runs Australia's other major seed library, the Pastures Gene Bank in Adelaide. A collection of more than 80,000 types of seed, some of which come from remote regions or crops that have now been wiped out.
Even though it may originate from overseas, it's not maintained in another gene bank overseas. So if we have a natural disaster at our gene bank here, this seed is lost forever. The chances of ever going back to the original country and getting it again are remote.
Which is why he's excited almost a third of his babies, as he calls them, are on their way to Norway.
What we have really made a conscious effort to do is to capture all the commercial varieties that farmers have grown over the last 50, 100 years. So all the historical ones and all the ones that are currently growing now. And associated with them, we have all their wild relatives, I guess.
First, though, Australia's third and largest delivery to Svalbard needs the green light from biosecurity officers. As well as securing the contents, the government seals on every crate allow Australia to retrieve the seeds quickly without going through quarantine. Local gene banks hope it's a withdrawal they never have to make, but it's not unheard of.
You look at Akada in Syria, one of the most important gene banks in the world in terms of global diversity of pulses, was backed up in Svalbard. When the conflict started there, seed bank's not able to operate. I think nearly 100% of that material was backed up into Svalbard. They've been able to take that out, grow it back up, and they're putting material back in.
Turning what gene banks harvest by hand into something worth putting a full-size header through is a long ride. But one Wimmera grower and scientist Tony Gregson is helping to drive.
We need new varieties with better disease resistance, adapting to climate change. I was only thinking today when I was harvesting this paddock. This paddock's been hit by frost. And surely in someone's gene bank somewhere in the world there's germplasm, genetic resources that have genes that are going to help with frost damage.
They're a farmer's resource Mr. Gregson has had a closer look at than most, as well as visiting the Global Seed Vault and being good friends with its creator. He's also played a major role in getting collections out of Australia and into the Norwegian facility. And despite serving on many local and international agricultural boards, it's his part in the preservation of something so small that he says is his biggest career achievement.
I think it's number one. I think it is so important. It's got long-term things that I'm interested in. It helps farmers in Australia. It helps global food security. It ticks all the boxes.
I like to get outside and go over to the dairy. Actually, they're all doing what they're supposed to be doing.
He's like the 2IC, he's the go-to bloke for all things money. Hi, I'm Christy O'Brien in the Northern Territory. There's a special group of growers in the top end who fill a major gap in the Australian market, producing around $40 million worth of produce, particularly Asian vegetable varieties. But their journey hasn't been an easy one. Many came out as refugees after the Vietnam War.
Morning, Guy. How you going, mate?
It's a little-known venture kicking big goals. At Lake Bennett, just south of Darwin, this farm has 16 hectares of hydroponic crops, producing tons of food, including tomatoes, cucumbers and capsicums.
Today we're going to pick this side here.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything smaller than this, we do not pick.
Okay.
So with that, I'm going to follow you and teach you how to teach all these. Okay?
Michael Quach is one of few growers pioneering the technology in the top end. And like most of Michael's life, it's been a big gamble.
It's a long story. I will never thought that I'm going to be in Northern Territory growing cucumber.
At the end of the Vietnam War, men, women and children escaped by boat and sailed to Australia.
Michael Quach came to Australia with nothing, one of the 80,000 refugees who fled in the decade following the Vietnam War.
We went on the boat to Malaysia camp, and we were there about 16 months in the camp. It's very hard at the moment there, especially Mum. She was crying every night. They're hoping like we can come to another better country and to build a better life for, the future for the kids, that's been for us. And my dad I remember what he says, his life is over. He just wanted the kids. Everything is for the kids, so, yeah.
It's these humble beginnings that have fueled a fire in his belly that has seen him become one of the most successful top-end growers. He has a regular contract into one of the two big grocery chains in Australia and produces some of the highest volumes from a single grower in the region. This is far from an uncommon story in the top end. A huge chunk of the top-end farming community are in fact Vietnamese refugees.
This khổ qua, Vietnamese corn khổ quá, but this one bitter melon.
With very little skills or money, many of the community formed small collectives and shared equipment and workers, building slowly to now, where the Vietnamese growers contribute around $40 million to the Northern Territory economy.
I think it's easy to generalise, but when you see that the work done by these growers over the last 20 years, the distance industries come from almost nowhere to be a really significant part of the economy and the community in the Territory, and providing employment and economic opportunities.
Further up the road in Maracay, workers are head down harvesting cucumbers. Nai Pham is a respected local grower who also came to Australia as a refugee. So you had to learn farming when you came?
Yeah, I had to learn how to do a farmer, yeah.
Was that hard?
Yeah, hard, not easy.
His first foray into farming when he came to Darwin in the 90s was in Asian vegetables, learning the ropes off other farmers before buying his own place.
More big market, before this very slow, but now get better, yeah.
Son Chris Pham says he initially resisted taking over, but finally got sick of the rat race down south.
I've been here for 2 years and I've grown passion. It's interesting to see, how things grow from a seedling to a full-fledged plant and then start to fruit, and then you get your excitement from the prices going up and down each week. So yeah, it's a passion now.
He laments that he's one of the few young farmers around these parts.
Growing up in Australia, I know there's a lot of people who don't want to do hard work. You want to go to school, get your degree, and then find something that will make you a lot of money, but won't take much out of you.
Importantly, the produce from the north fills a major gap in the domestic market. With opposite growing seasons, producers can demand good prices and keep the shelves stocked all year round.
It fills in a particularly good window for our growers in the southern markets. A lot of the products that we grow are Asian-style melons, okra, snake bean, cucumbers and tomatoes and capsicums.
In a culture where foodies and wannabe master chefs are on the rise, the weird and wonderful varieties of Asian fruit and vegetables are also finding a new and appreciative audience.
Yeah, it's a real privilege to go along to some of these community meetings and try some of these products in traditional cooking. They're wonderful. Yeah.
This is, we call it a gourd, G-O-U-R-D, and angled loofah even.
But the culinary properties of this produce aren't new to many, including respected chef Jimmy Shu. For more than 20 years, every Sunday he's got up before sunrise to get to the farmers' markets in Darwin, sniffing, scratching and sifting his way through the local wares to snag the best produce.
That's the crunchy bit. And this is still fairly young, so I'll still use this part here. That one, I just, perfect.
A little bit of a culinary legend, Jimmy Shu has run more than 13 restaurants across the country and spent decades advocating for the local Asian growers by using the ingredients in his cooking, including his famous Hanuman restaurant in Darwin.
I think now all the Western chefs that traditionally they've been doing Western food are becoming more and more conscious about Asian food. And with the Asian flavors and you have the Asian ingredients, wow. The rapport is so wide, so we're so versatile.
It was his childhood in Sri Lanka, growing up in his father's kitchen, that set the foundations for a love of the vibrant and tropical produce. And he's only too happy to show us some tricks.
And with the curry powder, it's off the flame because the curry powder will burn instantly.
A winter melon suddenly transforms into a tasty dal. This strange-looking loofah, a perfect addition to an Asian omelette.
There you go. And if you say that it's grown here and grown there, they love it. And the good thing about it is that we then make contact with the actual grower.
Jimmy Shu believes the fusion of Asian and Western food will continue to have a stronghold in Australia, but says consumers are getting more savvy and many want direct contact with farmers as well as the freshness that comes with buying locally.
We muster, process the cattle in the yards, draft, walk them back out to the paddock, and then besides the cattle work, which takes up a good percentage of the year, we've got to do maintenance stuff. So we do a lot of fencing, but then build verandas or plumb toilets or paint or whatever needs to be done, really.
Horses are a big attraction to young girls, and also, when they see these shots that Emma's taking of some beautiful picturesque landscapes and action shots all happening in amongst it and the dust, a lot of the girls kind of think, wow, this is actually out there somewhere.
There's a belief that in agriculture, to be successful, you have to get big. But one Queensland farming family has worked out a way of staying small and being very profitable. The picturesque scenic rim is just over an hour from Brisbane and the Gold Coast. It's a growing tourist destination, but at its heart, this series of fertile valleys is farming country. The Tomarup family has farmed here since 1874 in a pocket called the Lost World. Dave is fifth generation.
It's a very big responsibility, I suppose, in a way, to have a fifth generation farm where you wouldn't want to do something to lose the farm.
When dairy deregulation hit 18 years ago, it looked like he'd be the last.
We started at about 65 cents a litre, averaging that, and then we went down to around 30 overnight.
Could you make money? Could you be profitable getting 30 cents a litre for your milk?
No, no way. Not a chance. Dave's parents also really struggled with what was happening because there were two families at that time and we couldn't make wages for two families. There's no way.
The couple took on extra jobs at the local school. Kay drove a bus, Dave did the grounds. But it was clear even with the off-farm income, the 80-hectare farm could only support one family. So Dave's parents left and Kay and Dave took over full-time.
We're just going to put everything that we have into this idea, and if it works, that's great. If it doesn't, we've given it our best shot.
The first change the couple made was to cut their small herd from 60 to a tiny 48, making it one of the smallest commercial dairy herds in Queensland.
If you say you're milking 25 cows in a room full of dairy farmers, it's just like you're a complete joke. And before we were ashamed of it, I suppose.
The dairy was barely a break-even proposition. They didn't have the resources to get bigger, so decided to diversify. Kay thought of milk. With only the best going to its customer, Norco, they were throwing some out.
It was terrible watching that milk be thrown away. We were just throwing it out the back on the paddock. And then I started harping on about getting pigs and not wasting the milk, and that was the next part of the diversification, was into the pigs.
And how hard was it, Dave? Because you don't like pigs, do you?
No. I remember pigs when I was little. My parents had them, and I just didn't really like them at all. But somehow I got talked into that.
They run two heritage breeds, the cranky Tamworths and the more amenable large blacks.
So we wanted to find a more docile breed, and the large blacks are supposed to be that, and they are just the most magnificent pigs. Love them, absolutely love them.
Do you love them, Dave?
I'm getting to love them now, yes. They are very friendly pigs, yeah, they're great.
They added free-range laying chickens, dairy beef, sheep and goats, and a farm shop.
Hello, Kay.
From their larder, they sell their yearling beef, pork, vegetables and cheese made locally from their milk, as well as produce from local farmers.
Have you tried that one before?
I got it last time.
I remember that.
The final piece of the puzzle was renovating a homestead and cottage for farm stays. While individually each operation generates small returns, tourism made the farm profitable.
And we look at it as a whole business now. So each element has to be there, otherwise it's just not what it can be.
It's the wide range of livestock operations visitors like the Lee family from Singapore will pay to see, touch and smell.
Wow, that's got it. It's a different experience for us, and I want to expose them to some farmers' life. Yeah, because back in Singapore, we do not have this opportunity to experience it.
Would you recommend it to your friends back in Singapore?
Yeah, definitely, especially for families with kids. Yeah, they look at things differently, and she already says that it's hard to be a farmer.
On day one, Giselle and Aidan were tentative with the animals and bothered by the flies.
Oh my God, the chicken!
The next day, though, they were having fun and revelling in the space.
The rooster? Yeah, it's very funny. They were running around and they were like a bit scared, but It's funny.
Rooster, cow.
And they like the guinea
And
pig.
sheep.
We're trying to give them backstage pass to our farm and show them what they wouldn't see if they're just looking at, you know, going in and patting a few animals at a petting zoo or something like that. This is a real farm. People leave here and they say, we've had the best time, thank you for sharing your farm with us, and that's a pretty good reward.
The kids don't want to go home, and it's like, see you Farmer Dave.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, and Farmer Kate as well, so it is nice to see that, yeah.
With so many mini enterprises, the workload here is unrelenting.
4, 5, 6. I think it's a joint thing that you do. I think it's about working as a team.
Yeah, I'd be pretty lost without Kay.
Ratio, isn't it?
Without her, I wouldn't get half the things that I need to get done, and we wouldn't have survived.
A role model for women in agriculture, she's also an ambassador for small family farms, which she says are making a comeback as consumers seek closer connections with those who grow their food. She says they'll never forget, though, the early days when they were told countless times they had only one option: to get big or get out.
As long as you're passionate about something, you can succeed. It doesn't matter if you're different, just as long as you're giving it your best shot. We've got a business that's successful. We're doing it the way that we want to, and it's okay, so we're proud of it now.
And that's the show. Thanks for your company. And remember to check us out on Facebook, where there's plenty to keep you entertained. Next week on A Taste of Landline, a Bradman scoring runs in the paddock.
He wouldn't care if I was a farmer or an astronaut, you know, but I think he would want to see me conduct whatever I did with the sort of values that he conducted his life with.
And snail ranching.
You've got to be very vigilant here, and you've got to get them before they attack you.